so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer. No announcements. Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers. Secretary of Finance. Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, Select Committees, Code of Conduct. Questions to secretaries have been deferred to the next sitting, as this is our budget sitting. Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business, executive council business, motion. Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary for Finance and the Economy.
Thank you, Madam Presiding. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Be it further resolved that this House approve the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure respecting all functions of the Tobago House of Assembly for the financial year October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021. Copies of which were laid on the table at the earlier stage of this proceedings. Madam Presiding Officer, Honorable Chief Secretary, Assistant Secretaries, Minority Leader and other members of the House of Assembly, Chief Administrator and other administrators, senior staff of the Tobago House of Assembly, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the public gallery, local and international audiences following this presentation on radio, on television, and on the World Wide Web, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, in accordance with Section 41(1) of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996, it is my distinct pleasure to stand before this Honorable House to present the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure of the Tobago House of Assembly for fiscal 2021. Madam Presiding Officer, today's statement gives life to the aspirations of our people and represents the combined efforts of staff of the Assembly and stakeholders within the wider community. I therefore wish to extend my sincere gratitude to all contributors whose insights and recommendations informed today's budget statement. My profound gratitude is extended as well to the new Chief Secretary and to a political leader, all secretaries and assistant secretaries, and staff of the various divisions for marshalling their resources to contribute to the development of this presentation. I wish to recognize especially the staff of the Division of Finance and the Economy, whom I affectionately call my dream team, and the staff in the Planning Department of the Office of the Chief Secretary for the dedication to duty throughout the budget process. My appreciation extends as well to the civil society organizations and the participants in the Tobago House of Assembly's pre-budget survey for 2020. Their numerous suggestions have assisted us in shaping some of the budgetary priorities I will outline today. Kindly allow me as well to acknowledge my darling spouse and dear family for their unwavering support at all times. Above all, I thank Almighty God for His continued guidance and the generosity of all those who worked with me as a team to help craft today's submission. I cannot thank them enough for the work that they have done. Madam Presiding Officer, today's budget is crafted against the backdrop of the global health and economic crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic that has significant implications for us here in Tobago. The resultant global economic recession is one of the most pervasive crises in history. It is exacerbated by the uncertainty of its duration, the uncertainty in its economic impact, and ultimately, the uncertainty of its toll on human life. With over 8 million infections and tragically, a high mortality rate of now over 450,000 globally, the novel coronavirus is unlike any pandemic in recent history. The isolation, disruption to life as we know it, and restrictions on basic human contact caused by this global health crisis has changed the world beyond recognition. What began as a health crisis was followed by the implementation of measures necessary to reduce contagion and protect lives. To protect citizens, industry has been halted, practically grinding the global economy to a halt. This unprecedented decline in service-related activities then snowballed into severe economic upheaval. Madam Presiding Officer, the amalgamation of these cataclysmic events necessitates a paradigm shift in the value proposition of our economies, in our development planning, implementation, and performance, and fundamentally in the way we live, learn, work, and relate to each other. In a world upended by the COVID-19 pandemic, we're expected to cope with the physical and economic impact of an outbreak that is threatening our very existence. As a people, we are expected to explore ways in which we can respond to and recover from this pandemic while addressing the sustainability challenges that still confront us. How do we do this? We must continue to advance our development agenda, even as we engage in meaningful reform, delivering tangible modernizations of financial practices and institutional accountability, enhancing opportunities in agriculture and SMEs development, while continuing our social safety net support for vulnerable individuals and communities. We must dig deeper to reach higher. Madam Presiding Officer, it is in Tobago's best interest to develop an evidence-based, localized framework to guide a measured reopening and socioeconomic recovery. In some sectors, an economic reset would be required. This will also benefit the overall national recovery effort. Moreover, as we seek to rebuild, it is evident that we must abandon a return to normal mindset and instead aim to devise ways to consciously transform the Tobago economy. Madam Presiding Officer, notwithstanding these challenges, I believe that as a people, we have the tenacity to surmount and emerge from this crisis stronger and more resilient. What is required of the Assembly is the recalibration of a development strategy to provide a more nuanced response. Accordingly, Today's budget response is aptly themed, recalibrating our priorities to a more resilient future. Madam Presiding Officer, today's fiscal package is framed within the context of the current international, regional, and national economic climate. A review of the fiscal 2019 financial and budgetary position will follow. I will then highlight key achievements of this administration over the past 3 years, after which I will present the rationale for our budgetary estimates, detailing our priorities for the fiscal 2021 budget. This will then be followed by the presentation of the estimates for fiscal 2021, along with the proposed funding mechanism. Before I conclude, I will highlight some synergistic collaborations between the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly. At this time, Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me to turn my attention to the current global, regional, and national economic climate. Madam Presiding Officer, in my presentations in the past, I remarked on the high levels of uncertainty affecting the global economy. On those occasions, I explored the concerns surrounding trade tensions between the United States and China, Brexit, and the slowing growth rate in China. This year, we have a level of uncertainty that is unprecedented. The COVID-19 pandemic, which emerged in January, has upended all previous forecasts for the global economy. It has led to lockdowns around the world in an attempt to control the spread of the virus. These public health measures have in turn brought significant parts of the global economy to a virtual halt. Workers have been furloughed, schools have been closed, transportation services have been disrupted, particularly airline travel and even activities deemed essential to have to operate within restrictions. The societal and economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic is unparalleled in its history. The response of policymakers around the world has been varied. However, here in Trinidad and Tobago, the response was swift and clinical. Government recognized the immediate need to shore up liquidity, cushion the impact on businesses and households, and to protect the most vulnerable in our society via significant social and financial interventions. Madam Presiding Officer, as countries wary of the possibility of a second wave, cautiously began reopening when their curves flattened, the cause of the disruptions to economic life is currently being assessed as we speak, and a revised forecast is being generated. In April, the International Monetary Fund forecast a sharp contraction in global domestic product of about 3% in 2020, and assuming the containment of spread and a gradual reopening, growth is expected to rebound in 2021. The contraction and recovery forecasts vary significantly among countries, with China expected to show overall growth in 2020 of about 1% since it emerged first from the economic lockdown. It is noteworthy that the World Bank is much more pessimistic, projecting a decline in the global economy of approximately 5.2% this year and a more modest recovery of 4.2% in 2021. The pace of any recovery is highly indeterminate. Among many highly respected analysts, including those at the Federal Reserve in the United States, there is a view that the lockdown and the consequential jump in unemployment will have longer-lasting effects due to the depletion to household and business savings, cash flow programs, and bankruptcies among some small businesses. Indeed, there have already been several high-profile bankruptcies among brick and mortar retailers who are struggling to remain competitive against the rise of online retailing. Madam Presiding Officer, in addition to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a precipitous fall in oil and gas prices, partly due to the sharp decrease in demand for these commodities due to the lockdown, but also due to the deliberate oversupply of oil which emerged in the first quarter of this year, when there was a division among Saudi Arabia, the OPEC countries, and Russia. This caused a dramatic fall in oil prices, which exerted a downward drag on natural gas prices as well. The market has been rebalancing during the second quarter of 2020 as OPEC agreed to temporary production cuts. However, the expectation is that prices will remain depressed because of weak global demand. In Trinidad and Tobago, the petrochemical industry, mainly ammonia and methanol, have been experiencing extremely low product prices since last year, and this has been exacerbated by the fall in demand due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. This has also resulted in let me start over. In Trinidad and Tobago, the petrochemicals industry, both ammonia and methanol, have been experiencing low product prices since last year, and this has been exacerbated by the fall in demand due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This has also resulted in uneconomic production for some plants, and several plants have remained idle in the last few months. The government of Trinidad and Tobago took a swift and decisive step to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The main public health response was to reassign surplus assets and establish a parallel healthcare system for COVID-19 patients so that the regular healthcare system will not be overwhelmed. In response to the threat posed to the economy, the government promptly devised strategy to mitigate these effects, and might I say, successfully so. The combination of, Madam Presiding Officer, the combination of the adverse exogenous shocks and the measures taken to mitigate against their effects have worsened the performance and outlook for the Trinidad and Tobago economy. It is anticipated that there will be further contraction of the economy in fiscal 2020, and the fiscal deficit is forecast to increase to approximately 14.5 billion TT dollars, or 8.5% of GDP. Fortunately, some of the resources available for financing the higher deficit are external, including the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and as such, the impact on the net international reserves will not be as great as would have otherwise have been the case. The impact on prices is harder to determine and predict. Lower demand will lower pressures for price increases. Conversely, if supply chains are disrupted and shortages develop, they may trigger higher prices in the future. Generally, it appears that no significant inflationary pressures have emerged as a result of the pandemic. Madam Presiding Officer, while Trinidad and Tobago does have substantial financial buffers, other regional economies, especially those that are tourism dependent, are not as fortunate. Several of these countries have had to access emergency financial assistance from the COVID-19 facility set up by the IMF, whereas Trinidad and Tobago has thus far only accessed resources from the Development Bank of Latin America, CAF, and the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB. However, the contraction of the tourism-dependent economies in the region will also impact Trinidad and Tobago, as several of our manufacturing firms export products to these economies, and some construction companies also provide services there. Madam Presiding Officer, Tobago's GDP at constant prices for 29 was estimated at $1.77 billion, 1.4% higher than the revised estimate of GDP for 2018 of $1.744 billion. The data indicate that the share of government activity in Tobago's GDP was approximately 44% in 2019, and the share of the financial services sector was approximately 26% in the same year. Madam Presiding Officer, the tourism sector accounted for 13% of the island's GDP in 2019. Moreover, the data show that the share of transport, storage, and communications was about 6% of Tobago's GDP in 2019. Further, the agriculture and manufacturing sectors collectively comprise about 2% of Tobago's GDP. For 2020, given the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, Tobago's GDP at constant prices is projected to decline. Not surprisingly, the largest decline is expected in the tourism sector, followed by the manufacturing sector and the financial services sector. Comparatively, the state sector is forecast to grow as government expenditure is buoyed by social welfare spending on relief programs and the completion of existing development program projects, as well as the commencement of shovel-ready projects in this fiscal year. Likewise, the agriculture sector is projected to grow moderately, aided in part by various initiatives aimed at boosting agriculture production on the island. Madam Presiding Officer, the most recent labor market data from the Central Statistical Office suggests that the unemployment rate in Tobago for the second quarter of 2018 was approximately 3.4%, down from 6.6% recorded in the comparative period in 2017. The data indicated that in the second quarter of 2018, approximately 60% of persons with jobs in Tobago were employed in the state sector, with the private sector employing approximately 40%. Madam Presiding Officer, the latest data on prices available from the central bank intimated that Tobago recorded headline inflation in February 2020 of approximately 1%, driven largely by low core inflation of 1.6% and negligible food price inflation. For the 12-month period ending February 2020, Tobago's headline and core inflation rates averaged 1.6% and 1.9% respectively, with food price inflation averaging close to zero. Madam Presiding Officer, at this time, please permit me to examine some recent financial and budgetary developments as they relate to the Tobago House of Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, in the financial year ended 30th September 2019, the Assembly received a total of $1,993,850,194 from the central government. The sum of $1,762,220,194 was received for recurrent expenditure, and $231,630,000 was received for development program expenditure. The sum of $200,494,115 was collected as tax and non-tax revenue in Tobago on behalf of the government and used to offset the total appropriation, bringing the total parliamentary appropriation in fiscal 2019 to $2,194,344,309. For fiscal 2019, recurrent and development program expenditure by the Assembly amounted to $2,134,236,307. Of this sum, recurrent expenditure amounted to $1,826,506,248, while development program expenditure totaled $307,730,059. At the end of fiscal 2018, an amount of $182,619,121 was unexpended and subsequently transferred to the contingencies account and used in fiscal 2019 to finance capital expenditure and urgent projects and programs in keeping with our mandate to advance the island's development and improve the standard of living of all Tobagonians. Some of the major projects and programs undertaken include the road resurfacing program, $28.1 million, the unemployment relief program, $20.5 million, the construction of the Roxborough Administrative Complex, $19.9 million, the Colon Estate Land Development, $17.6 million, the Community-Based Environmental Protection Enhancement Program, CPEP, $14.3 million, repairs to the Old Scarborough Market, $11.3 million, and rehabilitation of the Claude Noel Highway, $7.9 million. For fiscal 2020, the total budgetary allocation to the Assembly amounted to $2.26 billion. When disaggregated, $2.03 was allocated for recurrent expenditure, and $231.6 million was allocated for development program expenditure. Madam Presiding Officer, this Assembly took the decision in 2012 to obtain a standalone credit from Moody's Investors Rating Agency. Following our annual rating review earlier this year, the Assembly was issued a credit rating of BA1 stable, which was the same as that of the sovereign. However, as the COVID-19 pandemic triggered a severe shock to global demand for oil and gas, resulting in plummeting prices, the outlook of the sovereign changed from stable to negative, which directly impacted the outlook of the Assembly. While our rating remains BA1, the outlook is also negative, the same as the sovereign. This rating review, Madam Presiding Officer, occurs annually, and together with our annual IMF Article 4 consultation, forms part of the Assembly's annual review exercise by international agencies. Madam Presiding Officer, in keeping with my commitment made in my 2020 budget statement, a meeting was convened with the Auditor General's Department to discuss matters relating to the outstanding audits of the Assembly's financial statements. Currently, the Auditor General's Department is auditing the financial statements for the Assembly for the year ended 30th September 2016, and in the face of financial and manpower challenges. I'm therefore pleased to advise this Honorable House that the Auditor General has agreed with the Assembly's recommendation to engage a reputable independent firm to assist with the auditing of the outstanding financial statements. In this regard, with the assistance of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Trinidad and Tobago, a request for proposal was issued, and Madam Presiding Officer, we await the feedback from ICAT. You may also recall, Madam Presiding Officer, that in my previous budget statements, that I had also acknowledged some challenges emanating from the previous reports coming from the Auditor General's Department. These reports in no way suggested malfeasance, and by any means recognizing as well that the system that we use is antiquated. We embarked on a program to re-engineer and modernize our accounting systems aimed at increasing efficiency, accountability, transparency, and real-time decision-making, ultimately eliminating the use of a manual accounting system. The implementation of the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, was also piloted in collaboration with the central government and the IDB, and is one of our major projects that will be executing in fiscal 2021. However, Madam Presiding Officer, this project has experienced some delays in its rollout because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the implementation timelines are being reviewed. This notwithstanding, pre-COVID-19 saw the completion of the new chart of accounts based on the IMF's general financial statistics. The base electronic module for asset inventory recording and maintenance registration systems of the government was also completed, and the configuration of the system of the chart of accounts is ongoing. The requirements and specification documents for the budget cycle and the public sector investment program were also completed, and the risk management workshop on the IFMIS was facilitated by the IADB earlier this year. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly is committed to public financial management modernization and best practice, as well as integrity and accountability, and we are working diligently to ensure that this project is completed in the most efficient and timely manner. At this time, Madam Presiding Officer, please allow me to review some of our achievements over the past 3 years. Madam Presiding Officer, in January 2017, this administration provided the people of Tobago with a manifesto detailing our proposed activities for the 4-year period ending 2021. Madam Presiding Officer, the theme of the manifesto was enhancing delivery, strengthening partnerships, and outlined a comprehensive program of initiatives to advance this island's socioeconomic development. Madam Presiding Officer, as you are well aware, the past 3 years have been particularly challenging as the country faced falling oil and gas prices, service disruptions on the air and sea bridge, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these challenges, and with the commitment, hard work, and tenacity of our people, led by this administration, we were able to surmount our challenges and ensure that our development momentum continued. Madam Presiding Officer, there has been significant socioeconomic development on this island over the past 3 years, and with your leave, please permit me to highlight a few of these achievements over the past 3 years. Madam Presiding Officer, as it relates to overall management of the Tobago economy over the last 3 years, we were able to contain inflation to moderate levels, so much so that in the last 3 years, headline and food price inflation averaged 1.5% and 2.1% respectively. We were able to contain unemployment levels so that for the most part, over the past 3 years, our unemployment rate has remained under 5%, a figure which compares quite favorably to that of our neighboring Caribbean countries. We're also able to manage the overall economic activity on the island to avoid any severe recessionary activities. We also prudently manage the Assembly's finances to maintain transparency and accountability. We're able to maintain a positive operating margin of approximately 10.8% of operating revenue, reflecting an increase of 2% in operating revenues along with a 2.2% decrease in operating expenditure. We're also able to maintain low debt levels of approximately 13.6% of operating revenue. And we're also able to maintain strong liquidity levels, averaging 12.9% of total expenditures. Madam Presiding Officer, this solid performance compares favorably to other regional countries and allows the Assembly to absorb potential external shocks. Madam Presiding Officer, to promote entrepreneurial activity and to assist in the diversification of the Tobago economy, over the last 3 years, this administration dispersed approximately $6.3 million to entrepreneurs to increase business activity through the Enterprise Assistance Loan and Grant programs. We provided capacity enhancement programs to Tobago entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs across several areas, including export fundamentals and business development. We also provided subsidized land and factory space to businesses through the Eco-Industrial Development Company of Tobago, EIDCOT, to develop and scale up their businesses. We awarded approximately $6.4 million in equity investments under the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited to Tobago entrepreneurs and to companies with high growth potentials in order for them to develop and expand their businesses. We provided market exposure and support to entrepreneurs by facilitating their participation in several national, regional, and international trade shows and investment conventions, including the Tobago Goes to Trinidad Business Expo, the annual Trade and Investment Convention, TIC, in Trinidad, the annual Havana Trade Fair, and the Expo Caribbean trade shows in Cuba, and we facilitated capacity building and training programs in key areas such as developing an export plan, brand management and reputation, and Tobago Export Readiness Program, all in partnership with Export TT. Madam Presiding Officer, to stimulate agricultural activity in Tobago and to boost food production over the last 3 years, this administration has refurbished the Scarborough market to the tune of $38.65 million to continue to foster agricultural business activity in Tobago. Secondly, we have registered approximately 519 root crop and livestock farmers with the Division of Food Production, Forestry, and Fisheries. We have registered approximately 3,100 home gardeners to assist in boosting crop and food production through our home garden initiative. We have conducted approximately 5,000 farm visits across the island through our extension officers. We have distributed 224,601 tissue cultured plants to farmers across the island. We have also provided capacity enhancement training programs to approximately 3,200 farmers and other interested persons in a range of areas, including crop production, livestock, and agro-processing. We have also provided approximately $3 million in incentives to foster increased production and business activity among farmers. We have also invested $134 million to improve access to lands under the Agricultural Access Road Program. Among these roads are Jigger Hill, Indian Walk, and Farmers Road in Mason Hall, Observatory in Speyside, Flagstaff Hill in Charlottesville, and Windsor Road, Caledonia, Farm Road, and Terry Hill Road in Mount St. George. And we have supported the participation of young people in agriculture through the the YAPA, or the Youth Apprenticeship Program in Agriculture, where approximately 60 students recently graduating from cycles 10 and 11 of this program. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration has also invested significantly in the areas of tourism over the last 3 years, to the extent that we have accomplished the following activities. We have, one, established the Tobago Tourism Agency to lead the revitalization of the tourism sector in Tobago. Secondly, we have rebranded Destination Tobago as Tobago Beyond Ordinary, for which the island gained a silver award for the Best National Tourism Board campaign at the World Travel Market International Travel and Tourism Award in 2019. We have also administered the Tourism Accommodation Upgrade Program, or TOP, which provide a reimbursable grant for approved upgrade hotel works. And we have also administered the Trinidad and Tobago Tourism Industry Certification, or TTIC program, aimed at improving quality and service standards, visitor experience, and global competitiveness. We have also launched the program for Blue Flag certification, aimed at promoting sustainability in the tourism sector through environmental education and protection and other sustainable development practices. And we have also successfully negotiated airlift out of the UK and Germany through Thomas Cook and Condor Airlines, respectively, as well as airlift out of Canada through Sunwing Airlines. Madam Presiding Officer, over the past 3 years, this administration has also invested significantly in the health infrastructure and support services, and we have successfully managed to achieve the following. One, we have commenced the construction of the Moriah Health Center and the Rockthrough Hospital at a cost of $24.7 million and $99.3 million, respectively. These two projects are expected to be completed by the third quarter of fiscal 2021. We have introduced free arteriovenous fistula surgeries for renal failure patients, and together with the requisite staff training in collaboration with the Bridge of Life NGO. We have also conducted island-wide free vision screening for approximately 500 persons. We have also distributed approximately 9,600 emergency social assistance cards, thereby providing financial relief to qualifying applicants. And we have also distributed 350 emergency medical devices to medically at-risk persons. Madam Presiding Officer, we have also established a regional office and assessment center of the Children's Authority in Tobago in collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister. We have also provided social support to vulnerable groups through a number of programs and initiatives through various departments, including the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Program, ADAP, the Children and Family Services Unit, the Disability Affairs Unit, the Community Mediation Center, the Gender Affairs Unit, the Program for Adolescent Mothers PAM, the Aging Unit, and the Probationary Unit. And finally, we have provided training for over 200 employees in the gender-based violence, vocational skills, and occupational health and safety through the CPEP program. Madam Presiding Officer, in terms of our support for human capital development over the past 3 years, this administration has achieved the following. We have provisioned approximately $5 million per year to support tertiary education under the Financial Assistance Program of the Department of Advanced Training and Advisory Services. We have invested approximately $15 million annually to upgrade primary and secondary school infrastructure on the island under this annual school repair program. We have also expanded student capacity at the primary school levels through the construction of the Scarborough RC Primary School at a cost of $86.2 million, and also facilitated the expansion of 4 primary schools at Hope, the Hope Anglican, and at Patrons Hill Government, Signal Hill Government, and the Wim Anglican Primary School, all at a cost of $15.8 million. We have also established a professional development center at Madden House in John Dial, where numerous training opportunities for curriculum officers, principals, and teachers have been offered to improve teaching, learning, and student performance. We have also designed and implemented a post-secondary entrance assessment development program for remedial students. We have also partnered with the Division of Health, Wellness, and Family Development to provide support in physiotherapy, speech, and occupational therapy to students across the island. And we have also developed a healthier school feeding menu for primary and secondary school students, utilizing greater local produce, thereby providing additional market and support to farmers. We have also opened 2 additional walking and IT literacy centers at the Mount St. George, and at Bagatelle. And we have also trained 300 persons in IT literacy and the Microsoft Office suite applications, and also provided internet and computer access to approximately 7,100 persons through the Tobago Information Technology Limited's IT literacy and business centers. And we have also facilitated and expanded a successful vocational training program across 30 communities in Tobago with approximately 4,100 participants. Madam Presiding Officer, as it relates to our efforts to enhance and encourage youth development on the island, over the past 3 years, we have been able to achieve as an administration a number of successes. Please allow me to outline them in some detail. We have offered a number of youth professional training programs, such as the World of Work program and the Youth Energized for Success summer internship programs, to enhance employability of approximately 500 young persons on the island. We have also introduced the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics STEM after-school program to provide Tobago students with great opportunities to access new and emerging technologies, such as electronics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, advanced coding, advanced robotics, and multi-purpose drones. I'm pleased to announce this initiative, under this initiative, Madam Presiding Officer, over 230 students benefited from the STEM training. Additionally, we hosted the UBiz Summer Camp, Financial Literacy Tours, and the Financial Literacy Youth Exposition to provide exposure and improve the overall financial literacy levels and entrepreneurial skills among Tobago's young adults. Madam Presiding Officer, to assist in enhancing and completing their homes, we were able to distribute to Tobagonians approximately $9.3 million to 1,254 persons under the Home Improvement Grant. We were able to distribute as well $1 million to 109 persons under the Home Improvement Subsidy. We were able to distribute $2.3 million to 227 persons under the Home Completion Grant Program. And lastly, we were able to distribute $8.8 million to 407 persons under the Beneficiary-Owned Land Program. Madam Presiding Officer, our administration has also made significant investments in the physical, recreational, and community infrastructure on the island. And over the past 3 years, we are able to execute a number of projects, such as the completion of the Rockville Administrative Complex at a cost of $60.2 million, road refurbishment and resurfacing work at a cost of approximately $110 million. Some of the major roads competing under this program include Mount St. George to Studley Park, Windward Main Road, Northside Road, Rockley Vale to Providence, Easterfield Branch Road, Gardenside Street and the Lambo Main Road, Arnosville Road, Daniel Trace in Carmby, Farm Road in Mason Hall, Smithfield Connector Road in Lower Scarborough, the Charlotteville Lansome Link Road, and Spring Garden Trace. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, the provision of approximately $130 million was utilized to improve drainage in communities across Tobago, including Manawar Bay, Charlotteville, Robert Street, Roxborough, Sheep Pen, Glamorgan, Cardiff, in Glamorgan as well, Dinette Trace, Moriah, Top Hill, Mason Hall, Mount Thomas, Daniel Trace, Carnby, Wave Trace in Bagatelle, Fort Street, Mount Pleasant, and the St. Luke Road in Signal Hill, to name a few. We were able also to complete a number of retaining walls and slipper drains in numerous communities across the island, including Charlotteville, Delaford Phase 1, Belgarden Bay Road, Spring Street, Belgarden, Betsy Soap, Idlewild, Pembroke, and Farm Road. We were also able to achieve the upgrading of a number of secondary roads across the island in areas such as the Blenheim Housing Project in Hope, the Arnosvale Road, Farm Road in Mason Hall, and McKnight Trace in Bonaccord, to name a few. We were also able to achieve the completion of Phase 1 of the Claude Noel Highway Rehabilitation Project. We were also able to complete the Lambo River Dual Lane Bridge at a cost of $28.1 million. Additionally, this 3-year period saw the completion and commissioning of the Smithfield Connector Road Phase 1 at a cost of $20.1 million. And additionally, the operationalization of the Studley Park Enterprise Limited and the restructuring of the Studley Park Quarry. Another achievement over this past 3-year period under infrastructure, Madam Presiding Officer, would have been the recommissioning of the Barbados Bay Jetty to facilitate the export of aggregate, as well as the implementation of coastal protection programs at Fort Granby, Lambo, and Pigeon Point, and also the upgrade of several recreation grounds to the tune of $3.7 million, including Hope, Speyside, Goodwood, Roxborough, Blackrock, Shaw Park, and Plymouth. And before I move on, Madam Presiding Officer, our two final achievements under this setting would have been the construction of the new multipurpose facility in Belgarden at a cost of $13.1 million, and as well the refurbishment of community centers and multipurpose facilities across the island, including Signal Hill, Mount Grace, Castara, Lansome, Bethel, Golden Lane, Blackrock, Pembroke, Palatuvier, Lowlands, Calder Hall, Buku, Canaan, Bonaccord, and John Dial at a cost of approximately $35.5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, beyond these various achievements which I have just highlighted, more recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, this administration has been able to afford much needed relief to Tobagonians. To assist the vulnerable persons who were affected by the pandemic, a number of social initiatives were implemented. Additionally, to assist the protection and preservation of Tobago's businesses in the tourism sector, in tourism and other sectors, financial support was made through the provision of $50 million to the Tobago hotel industry for financial support to facilitate Madam Presiding Officer. Additionally, To assist the protection and preservation of Tobago businesses in the tourism industry and other sectors, financial support was made through the provision of $50 million to the Tobago hotel industry for financial support and to facilitate maintenance and upgrade works, with an additional $4 million being allocated to auxiliary services. Second, the $10 million liquidity support program for Tobago credit unions to allow them to provide loans to their members at favorable interest rates and flexible repayment periods. Thirdly, the $50 million in funding to the Tobago House of Assemblies, Tobago Regional Health Authority to treat with COVID-related expenses. And fourthly, $5 million for the Enterprise Development Program to assist small businesses. And lastly, the support of the agricultural sector in the sum of $7.6 million. Madam Presiding Officer, this is just a brief snapshot of the achievement of this administration over the past 3 years. And I want to emphasize brief, Madam Presiding Officer. These initiatives have impacted various social and economic sectors and are all geared towards improving the standard of living and quality of life of all Tobagonians and citizens resident on the island. Madam Presiding Officer, excuse me, please permit me now to detail our fiscal priorities for the fiscal period 2021. Madam Presiding Officer, the budget estimates which I will present later on today were largely influenced by the draft medium-term policy and planning framework, the Tobago House of Assembly's pre-budget surveys, the contributions of various stakeholders, the budgetary submissions from the various divisions of the Assembly, and most significantly, the need to revive the Tobago economy following the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration has been guided by these submissions, which have assisted us in setting an agenda to propel the island's development, and that is why the budget theme for fiscal 2021 is so appropriate, recalibrating our priorities towards a more resilient future. Madam Presiding Officer, this year's budget statement focuses on the following thematic areas. 1, stimulating our economy. 2, enhancing our government framework. 3, revitalizing the tourism sector. 4, revitalizing agriculture and improving food security. 5, strengthening small and medium enterprises. 6, building strategic digital infrastructure. 7, enriching educational opportunities and human capital development. 8, preserving health and well-being. 9, expanding housing opportunities. 10, augmenting our social safety net support. 11, investing strategically in our physical infrastructure. And 12, environmental sustainability. Madam Presiding Officer, I will now elaborate on each of these thematic areas in turn, starting with our efforts to stimulate our economy. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration is cognizant of the fact that the Tobago economy, just like the national economy and many economies around the world, has been adversely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, many countries worldwide have turned to a range of fiscal stimuli and other measures to mitigate against some of the harmful effects of the pandemic and to assist in the economic revival and transformation. In my capacity as Secretary of Finance and Economy in the Assembly, I was appointed as a member of the National Economic Committee, which was mandated to devise measures to mitigate the negative effects of the pandemic on Trinidad and Tobago. The committee held several meetings with various stakeholders and decided on a series of strategies to assist the country in coping with the negative effects of the pandemic. Many of the economic stimulus measures now in place both at the national level and in Tobago had their genesis in the work of this committee. Concurrently, in my capacity as Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of Finance and the Economy, I was appointed to chair an Executive Council subcommittee mandated to come up with imperatives to minimize the harmful effects of the pandemic on Tobagonians. In this context, we engaged a number of stakeholders across a wide spectrum of social and economic sectors, inclusive of the Tobago chapter of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the wider tourism sector, the Customs Department, the Tobago cooperative societies, the trade union movement, supermarket owners, and other small business owners, as we sought to devise measures to mitigate against the harmful effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, arising out of these consultations, we proposed a series of economic and social measures to reduce the impact of the pandemic on Tobago, which were presented to and approved by the Executive Council. Madam Presiding Officer, although the implementation of many of these measures are well underway, we are mindful of the fact that there must be continuing efforts to reset and reinvigorate our economy through fiscal stimuli of various forms. In fact, the Chief Secretary recently appointed a Tobago Economic Recovery Working Group that is mandated to develop measures to guide our economic recovery efforts. A preliminary report is expected by the end of July, with the final report due later this year. Madam Presiding Officer, guided by the recommendations of this working group, as well as the ongoing work of the Division of Finance and the Economy, the Assembly proposes to undertake a number of fiscal measures with the overall objective to arrest any declines in economic activity and to set our economy on a trajectory for recovery and positive growth. Our fiscal stimulus measures will be geared primarily towards ensuring business continuity, preserving and creating jobs, stimulating production and aggregate demand, and protecting our society's vulnerable groups. Madam Presiding Officer, as we rebuild our economy, it is important that we do so in a way that will enable us to develop the necessary resilience to cushion the effects of future economic shocks. However, to build economic resilience in any effective manner, we will need meaningful collaborations and partnerships among the private sector, workers, and the Assembly. The private sector needs to identify new products and services that have marketable value. Workers need to increase productivity and efficiency, and the state needs to foster an enabling environment to facilitate these activities. As a division in the Tobago House of Assembly charged with the overall management of the Tobago economy, we continue to assess the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our key economic variables with a view towards identifying feasible and sustainable solutions to address them. Madam Presiding Officer, we recognize that several sectors have been adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and any effective response would mean addressing issues across various sectors. With this in mind, it is therefore important that our fiscal stimulus package address these challenges across a wide range of economic sectors, and as such, we must be multi-sectoral in our approach. We also propose to institute a rigorous program to monitor the implementation and to evaluate the effectiveness of our various measures over the next couple of months. The Economic Management and Research Unit in the Division of Finance and Economy will be tasked with building the appropriate data architecture to support this initiative and to allow for evidence-based decision-making. At this time, Madam Presiding Officer, please allow me to turn to our strategy to enhance our governance framework. Madam Presiding Officer, a sound governance framework strengthens the capacity and effectiveness of policy making and delivery to the citizenry in the face of existing areas of institutional reform, as well as unforeseen challenges such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Best practice has demonstrated that a coherent, integrated systems-based approach to reform can lead to better results through the identification of synergies, trade-offs, and sequencing considerations that can guide efforts in achieving successful, sustainable outcomes. As such, the Assembly is prepared to take a coordinated whole-of-government approach that is informed by lessons learned from global and regional standards, local responses, and feedback. Key to this objective is institutional strengthening, focus on identifying the enablers, and the recalibration of our policy tools and instruments for improved effectiveness. 3 areas have been targeted to address these issues in fiscal 2021, and they include: 1, accelerating the modernization of the Assembly's accounting framework. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration remains committed to the implementation of the IFMIS project outlined earlier. We are committed as well to completing and adopting the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. Madam Presiding Officer, modernization is not an overnight achievement, and this transition often requires delicate management. Nevertheless, a prudent approach remains critical to stewarding our financial resources over the next coming years. A cross-functional team at the Division of Finance and the Economy has been diligently working with the government ministries in Trinidad, the IDB, and other stakeholders to accelerate the transformation to a comprehensive financial framework and enhanced management information system. In addition to the IFMIS pilot project, Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Finance and the Economy will be further upgrading the Assembly's public investment management by improving the policy cycle framework. This will include aligning the planning and expenditure priorities through the introduction of a robust multi-year strategic planning and budgetary framework with particular focus on project prioritization. Madam Presiding Officer, this initiative will be executed in fiscal 2021 in collaboration with the IDB. Madam Presiding Officer, value for money can also be achieved with a well-functioning procurement system. I'm pleased to announce that strides have been made in rolling out the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act as amended. In the upcoming year, the Division of Finance and the Economy intends to work closely with the relevant authorities to address viable solutions for public-private partnerships transactions and for electronic procurement with the assistance of our multilateral, regional, and international partners towards mitigating information asymmetry, increased ease of access and competitiveness, and generating cost savings. Madam Presiding Officer, the third area of focus as we seek to enhance our governance framework is developing digital government. Madam Presiding Officer, the COVID-19 pandemic has been referred to as the white swan of governance that has ushered in Government 4.0, where operations are agile and lean, balancing the now and the next. Remote and flexible work, digital engagement on social media and via virtual call centers have become the de rigueur. We must build on the gains made during this crisis, which saw 2 years of digital transformation occur in 2 months, particularly in public sector organizations known for digital inertia. Building on the work of the draft medium-term policy and planning framework, Madam Presiding Officer, divisional reports and departmental proposals, this administration will institutionalize the crowdsourced funding of innovative solutions to recalibrate our priorities and engender an improved public governance ecosystem. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly IT managers and key stakeholders that comprise the ICT committee mentioned earlier will manage the transition from analog to e-government and ultimately digital government over the next 5 years. This will be undertaken on a phased basis to include the adoption of the digital government strategy and the establishment of a clear governance framework, the support for the necessary legal and regulatory updates, investment in a secure technology backbone for widespread digital adoption, the promotion and enforcement of digital guidelines and integrated service design and delivery policy for the Assembly, and institutionalizing mechanisms for a data-driven public sector and open government data strategy. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn my attention to the tourism sector. As we would agree, Madam Presiding Officer, the tourism industry has been one of the industries most adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, globally, the tourism industry has been decimated by measures taken to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. My apologies. Let me start from the top. The tourism industry has been one of the industries most adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, globally, the tourism industry has been decimated by the measures taken to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. The United Nations World Tourism Organization estimated that globally, international tourist arrivals may decrease by 20 to 30% in 2020, leading to a potential loss of revenue of approximately 30 to 50 billion US dollars. Unfortunately, the prognosis from some of the leading tourism experts around the world is that the tourism sector is unlikely to return to normalcy anytime soon. Even after the progressive lifting of containment measures, surviving tourism establishments are expected to face a slow recovery in the upcoming years. Madam Presiding Officer, it is no different for us here in Tobago. The closure of borders, restaurants and bars, along with a sharp decline in both inter-island and international travel, have led to the furloughing of employees and diminished cash flows and access to foreign exchange. But Madam Presiding Officer, notwithstanding the challenges facing our tourism industry, this administration remains steadfast in our commitment to revive this industry in the upcoming fiscal year. In this regard, we will continue to work with our stakeholders in the industry to ensure that they benefit from the tourism upgrade, the tourism hotel grant facility. In addition, through the Business Development Unit, an allocation of $4 million is now available to ancillary support services in the tourism sector to aid in their survival at this time. Madam Presiding Officer, we continue to embrace every opportunity to reignite, reimagine, and revolutionize our tourism industry. Therefore, for the next fiscal year, the Assembly proposes to undertake a number of strategic initiatives, which include, but are not limited to, the following. An aggressive staycation campaign to stimulate economic activity and promote local expenditure, particularly by our domestic visitors in the upcoming months. Additionally, the continuation of a Tobago homecoming campaign focused on the Trinidad-Tobago diaspora in North America and Europe. Thirdly, the development of regulatory standards in collaboration with the central government for the development of a tourism regulatory and legal framework, which will guide the development and maintenance of tourism infrastructure sites and attractions on the island. Fourthly, the greater use of digital technology and the social media in marketing of our destination. Fifth, the provision of special incentives to hotels and guest houses in Tobago to boost their online presence through a COVID-19 digital grant. Sixth, enhanced training through the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Institute to improve service excellence. Seventh, the implementation of an aggressive community tourism campaign that will support initiatives such as the Costara Community Tourism Model and the Buku Passport Initiative. And additionally, eighth, the expansion of the Tourism Hotel Upgrade Program TOP at a cost of approximately $20 million to facilitate and encourage upgrade and enhancement of existing accommodation and facilities in alignment with our tourism product. Ninth, the expansion of the Trinidad-Tobago Industry Certification TTIC and Tourism Industry Training Program with a view towards improving the overall quality of service within the tourism industry. And finally, the acquisition of International Green Key Certification for the destination to allow for further development of the tourism product. Madam Presiding Officer, please allow me at this time to turn to the agriculture sector. Madam Presiding Officer, undoubtedly the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore the critical importance of agriculture and food security for us here in Tobago. Consequently, in response to the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Tobago's agricultural sector, the Division of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries has undertaken a number of measures to boost food production on the island. Among the measures being actively pursued in fiscal, that will be pursued in fiscal 2021 are the following. Sorry, Madam President, also let me read that again. Among the measures being actively pursued are the following. The introduction of free land preparation services through the tractor pool unit, the expansion of crop production incentives for specific crops, the distribution of planting materials free of charge to farmers, the provision of starter livestock to facilitate increased livestock production and their byproducts, and the expansion of crop irrigation, agro-processing, and home gardening incentives to farmers and potential farmers. Madam Presiding Officer, building on these initiatives for the upcoming fiscal year, we also propose measures geared towards enhancing the agricultural sector to ensure food security on the island. One of the major projects will be the creation of a Tobago Agribusiness Development Company through the consolidation of 3 existing companies, FIPCOT, the Tobago Cassava Products Limited, and the Tobago Cold Storage and Warehouse Facility, TICOSWAF. This consolidation allows for increases in economies of scale and efficiency, thereby strengthening the competitiveness of this new entity. Madam Presiding Officer, another important initiative is the development of a wholesale farmers market at Shaw Park to create greater structure, stability, and predictability in the local market. This is in addition to the development of an agro-tourism project at the Law Nature Valley. This new venture will involve the commercial integration of recreational activities, sports, games, cultural events, and tourism services through the provision of accommodation and related services into one operation. The selected site for this project is the Goldsboro Law Nature Valley. Among the other undertakings of the Division of Food Production, Forestry, and Fisheries over the upcoming fiscal year are the introduction of an extensive retraining program for farmers and agricultural extension officers in order, let me read that over again, Madam Presiding Officer, the introduction of an extensive retraining program for farmers and agricultural extension officers in modern farming techniques to place greater emphasis on technologically advanced and climate-resilient agriculture systems. Secondly, the expansion of the Agriculture Access Road Program to the tune of approximately $50 million, the provision of financial assistance to small and medium agribusinesses through enterprise assistance loan and grant programs, and finally, the increased use of digital technology, social media, mobile application, and websites to augment the agricultural marketing and distribution change between farmers, producers, and consumers. Madam Presiding Officer, at this time, please permit me to turn my attention to initiatives to strengthen small and medium enterprises over the next fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration has emphasized its commitment to diversification as a key ingredient in sustainable growth and economic resilience. The fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic has served as a timely reminder of this critical need. In this regard, Madam Presiding Officer, the needs of our SMEs will attract increased focus as we navigate the new normal. And it is therefore the goal of this administration to provide an enabling environment that allows businesses on the island to succeed and to identify and take advantage of emerging opportunities at a time when others may be tempted not to pursue entrepreneurship. While the recent COVID-19 restrictions represented a significant challenge, it has also provided opportunities for SMEs in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, the combined efforts of the Business Development Unit, the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor, as well as the Strategic Business Support Unit in the Division of Finance and Economy, and as well as the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited and the Eco-Industrial Company of Tobago, they have all resulted in an increase in the availability of a number of Tobago's products and services, both locally, both nationally and internationally. These entities will continue to be the Assembly's major support mechanisms to the SME sector in upcoming fiscal 2021. In addition to its work in fiscal 2020 of providing loans and grants to the tune of $2 million under the Enterprise Assistance Fund and the Enterprise Assistance, sorry, Madam Presiding Officer. In addition to its work in fiscal 2020 of providing loans and grants to the tune of $2 million under the Enterprise Assistance Fund and the Enterprise Assistance Grant Programs, respectively, the Business Development Unit has also been tasked with providing relief and incentives to SMEs impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, totaling approximately $5 million. To this end, the limits for loans and grants were increased from $250,000 to $500,000, and the grant funding increased from $25,000 to $50,000. To allow for faster processing time, online submission of applications is being encouraged. Additionally, the Business Development Unit will provide the necessary support to the ancillary services in the tourism sector to the tune of $4 million by the way of grant funding of up to $50,000. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, The Strategic Business Support and Development Unit in the Division of Finance and Economy is tasked with fostering an enabling environment that prepares SMEs to access and successfully compete in external markets. As we move forward, Madam Presiding Officer, the Strategic Business Development Unit will continue to leverage partnerships established with international entities to access external opportunities. The unit in Fiscal 2021 will facilitate increased product testing and certification for access to external markets and will provide the necessary support for upscaling and growing businesses in partnership with the Eco-Industrial Development Company of Tobago, EDCUT, and the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited. And as well, they will continue to facilitate access to e-commerce opportunity that allows for improved market access and e-payments. Madam Presiding Officer, the Eco-Industrial Development Company of Tobago, EDCUT, has been a key part of our diversification strategy here in Tobago. In keeping with its mandate of facilitating the development and diversification of the Tobago economy through environmentally sustainable production of goods and services, the company will embark in Fiscal 2021 They'll embark in Fiscal 2021 on a number of initiatives, including, first, the establishment of a food and beverage testing facility to ensure that the required standards of preparation, production, and packaging are developed and maintained, given the local, regional, and international requirements for food safety. Discussions will continue with Kariri and the Ministry of Health in Fiscal 21 to ensure that this initiative is executed. Madam Presiding Officer, the work of the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited has also taken on increased significance as our producers seek alternative means of financing to scale up their production to take advantage of opportunities in external markets. In 2020, the company approved some $6.4 million in equity funding in investments in manufacturing and agro-processing, and is currently evaluating proposals which total over $12.2 million. Madam Presiding Officer, these potential investments also cover manufacturing, agriculture, as well as the green technology and ICT sectors. Further, the company will partner with the Strategic Business Development Unit to identify and engage potential clients with a view of equipping them to take advantage of this financing facility as part of their growth strategy. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me now to look at our strategy for enhancing digital infrastructure. Madam Presiding Officer, the COVID-19 pandemic has significantly altered our social norms, exposing a greater need for creative and sustainable solutions to ensure that the health and safety of Tobagonians are maintained, that economic activity on the island continues unabated. Central to this approach is leveraging ICT as an engine for digital transformation here in Tobago. One of our key strategies for this digital evolution has been the Tobago Intelligent Island Initiative, which I outlined in previous budget statements. While incremental steps have been taken to expand the service offerings at the Tobago Information Technology Limited TITL, to build out our knowledge networks by hosting our own innovation conferences and camps, and to develop further partnerships within the local and regional technological community, a key pillar of this strategy has been the establishment of a Tier 3 data center at the Cove Eco-Industrial and Business Park. Madam Presiding Officer, over the last fiscal year, an RFP was issued for the center and tenders received. However, the bids submitted was significantly higher than our initial projections. As such, we returned to the drawing board, taking into account the feedback provided from bidders, as well as that of key stakeholders, and a more comprehensive feasibility study was commissioned, not only on the viability of the data center, but also on our wider Intelligent Island program, as we sought to truly leverage ICT as an enabler of socioeconomic development on the island. The COVID-19 pandemic, Madam Presiding Officer, has led to an extension of the initial deadline for this study, but it will be delivered to the Division of Finance in July as we seek to guide our next step in this initiative. It is therefore expected that the report will address enhanced service delivery through e-government services, as well as the development of shared platforms and enterprise architecture framework to serve as an integrated ICT backbone for the Assembly to improve data collection, analysis, decision-making, and management. And this will be spearheaded by a joint committee as outlined in our Enhancing Governance section earlier. The committee will be tasked with the implementation of the ICT governance framework and the execution and monitoring of the plan, as well as ensuring that ICT infrastructure across the Assembly are interoperable, up-to-date, and standardized, thereby facilitating savings in both capital and operational expenditure. Ultimately, collaboration and connectivity, Madam Presiding Officer, will improve operations across the Assembly and between the Assembly and the central government, as well as ensure true ownership and accountability across all divisions, departments, and agencies. Additionally, this study will address current opportunities for us to further stimulate the enabling environment required for sustainable economic activity in the 21st century. Other areas and sectors targeted include business process outsourcing, managed co-location and cloud services, such as disaster recovery, business continuity, and other advanced security services, capacity building and training opportunities in software and application development, such as 3D printing, and this will be done through the establishment of incubators for technological entrepreneurs and internship pipelines. Additionally, technology to facilitate improvements in efficiency of business processes and reduce transactional friction, such as local e-commerce solutions, payment platforms, and logistics and distribution channels, particularly for SMEs and the agri-processing sector, will also be introduced. And lastly, Madam Presiding Officer, advancement in the development of a security architecture in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Ministry of National Security. And this will be done to ensure the safety of our citizens. Madam Presiding Officer, the COVID-19 pandemic has reaffirmed our commitment to the Intelligent Island Initiative. Again, let me repeat that. The COVID-19 pandemic has reaffirmed our commitment to the Intelligent Island Initiative, as a pursuit of this digital integration will lead to social and economic transformation and resilience. And Madam Presiding Officer, we anticipate that this project will be executed, and we'll hear further about it in Fiscal 2021. At this time, Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me to turn to our strategy for enhancing educational opportunities. Over the last fiscal year, Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Education, Innovation, and Energy has experienced significant improvements and achievements. This was most evident in the areas of enhanced physical school environment, continuous and focused human resource capacity building, and excellent student performance. Madam Presiding Officer, as part of our annual school repair program, all early childhood education centers, as well as several primary schools and secondary schools, were repaired and upgraded at a cost of $15 million. Additionally, during fiscal 2020, the Division of Education placed extensive focus on training and human resource development. School supervisors, principals, and teachers all participated in a variety of programs. These targeted capacity building interventions enhance the performance of our teachers and improve the accomplishments of our students at SEA, CSEC, and CAPE. Madam Presiding Officer, while the pandemic has caused major disruptions to the education system, its impact has created novel opportunities for us to reinvent our mode of delivery and operations. Over the past 3 months, the Division of Education relaunched its website, provided a free online learning management system to teachers and students. The division also collaborated with Tobago Channel 5 and the Tobago Television TTT to offer innovative e-learning platforms for students. Additionally, the Teachers Professional Center at Madden House, John Dial, which was established in 2018, has become the hub for the development of innovative teaching and learning methodologies. Madam Presiding Officer, over the next fiscal year, digital learning will be the new normal for the delivery of quality education throughout Tobago. It is therefore the intention of this administration to provide interactive smart boards to the 12 ECCE centers, 40 primary schools, and 9 secondary schools across the island. Extensive training for educators and ICT support for parents will be a priority to augment this initiative. An e-learning transition and implementation team will be appointed to manage and facilitate this initiative on a phased basis, utilizing the professional center as its home. Madam Presiding Officer, our students with special needs continue to be a focal point of this administration. Major physical upgrades and human resource development programs are undertaken at the School for the Deaf, Speech and Hearing Impaired, and as well the Happy Haven School. Additionally, a consultation was held with stakeholders to discuss preliminary concept drawings for the construction of a new school. During fiscal 2021 as well, Madam Presiding Officer, we'll continue with our efforts to construct a new Scarborough Secondary School. A possible site has been identified and a geotechnical survey is to be conducted. The estimated cost of this project is $200 million. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration under the Division of Education will also place great emphasis on technical vocational education and training for Tobago in the upcoming fiscal year. After an evaluation of the TVET exposition held in December 2019, a decision was taken to upgrade all TechVoc laboratories at secondary schools as well as the Roxborough Trade Center. The construction certification training program now offered at the Roxborough Trade Center and the Technology Center at Canaan will be expanded to offer levels 1 and 2 certifications in masonry, carpentry, plumbing, and electrical installation. This program targets adults between the ages of 18 to 60 years and is available to citizens resident in Tobago. The cost of the TVET initiatives for fiscal 2021 is approximately $3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me at this time to highlight some of our initiatives for preserving the health and well-being of Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, protecting and preserving the health and well-being of Tobagonians remains a priority for this administration. I must, at this time, extend my profound gratitude to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development, the management team and staff, and especially all frontline workers for their professionalism and dedication to service in the overall management of the COVID-19 pandemic in Tobago. The number of positive cases on the island was low. However, had it not been for the careful management and the rigorous enforcement of the health protocols by our health professionals, the situation on the island could have been much worse and much different. Madam Presiding Officer, as we continue to work towards improving the overall health and well-being of our residents in Tobago. Among the initiatives, the Division of Health and Wellness and Family Development and the Tobago House of Assembly proposes to undertake in the upcoming fiscal year are the completion and operationalization of the Moray Health Center and the Roxborough Hospital, the refurbishment of the Scarborough Regional Hospital at Fort King George to provide a parallel health facility to manage and treat with any infectious disease outbreaks without disrupting or compromising the existing healthcare services, the enhancement of the ICT capability throughout the health system on the island, including the development of an integrated hospital information system, which will include an electronic medical record system, the increased use of telemedicine throughout the entire health system to reduce the need for patient visit to the hospital for follow-up clinics, the upgrade of existing primary healthcare facilities to allow for increased diagnostic capabilities and enhanced screening, the expansion of the Know Your Numbers, Know Your Risk programs to improve our management of non-communicable diseases or NCDs, the upgrades to the neonatal and intensive care units, as well as upgrades to the laboratory to include biochemistry and PCR testing, point of care and point of care testing for microbiology. Additionally, the upgrade to an expansion of our dialysis care center, and as well upgrades and expansion to the cardiac catheter laboratory. And lastly, Madam Presiding Officer, the provision of additional psychological support for healthcare workers and other frontline staff. Madam Presiding Officer, at this time, I will now turn my attention to housing opportunities for Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago House of Assembly will continue to improve the quality of life of Tobago's residents through the provision of safe and affordable housing solutions that cater to the needs of low and middle income households. The Division of Settlements, Urban Renewal and Public Utilities has historically employed traditional financing methods for the execution of housing development projects. While the division has been able to deliver subsidized housing, the rate of delivery has not kept pace with the current demand. Therefore, in order for the division to fulfill its mandate and also to navigate its current challenges, alternative policy options have been considered and as well adopted. The Division of Settlements is currently seeking to facilitate the development of affordable housing solutions to meet the needs of approximately 4,000 citizens over the next 10 years. To achieve this, the division, in collaboration with the Division of Finance and the Economy, is in the process of delivering the Sherwan Integrated Housing Development Project, utilizing the public-private partnership modality to provide approximately 250 affordable housing units with ancillary community and commercial facilities and the requisite green spaces on approximately 45 acres of land located at the Sherwan Estate. Developers will be invited to design, finance, and construct the integrated development, as well as to oversee the operations and maintenance of all commercial facilities and communal spaces for approximately 15 to 20 years. The project, Madam Presiding Officer, is currently concluding the business case phase and is expected to be approved for procurement during this year. Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Settlements will also be pursuing 3 similar development projects at Adelphi, Corlan, and Adventure Phase 2 to further support the Assembly's mandate to provide ultra-modern yet affordable housing solutions for Tobagonians. As I conclude this section on housing, Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me at this time to turn my attention to provisions for social safety net support in the upcoming fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, we are mindful of the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented disruption in the daily lives and livelihoods of our citizens. This administration has been sensitive to the needs of the vulnerable groups on the island and have collaborated with the central government on a range of initiatives to cushion the impact of the pandemic on our at-risk groups. We are committed to ensuring that our suite of programs and initiatives are targeted and effective, especially during this trying period. Over the next fiscal year, we propose to provide counseling and e-government services and strengthen mental health support. Sorry, Madam Presiding Officer, let me repeat that from the top. We propose to provide online counseling and e-government services, and we also propose to strengthen mental health support and programs and facilities. We propose to provide special incentives to encourage individuals and businesses to support the establishment and maintenance of existing facilities and homes for at-risk children, young adults, and women. We propose to provide greater support to civil society organizations, NGOs, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and charity, particularly those delivering services to vulnerable groups that are disproportionately impacted by this crisis. For example, single female-headed households and children. We will provide additional funding for the implementation of programs aimed at reducing all forms of violence in families and communities, in particular gender-based violence. We'll build the capacity of CSOs, or civil society organizations, and promote multi-partner collaborations to execute social services on behalf of the Assembly, and we'll facilitate civil society organizations' access to grant funding and technical assistance from our multilateral development partners. Madam Presiding Officer, as I conclude this segment on augmenting our social safety net support, I will now turn my attention to strategic investment in physical infrastructure. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. In the Latin American Caribbean region, Madam Presiding Officer, it is no secret that many small island states face huge infrastructure deficits. Studies undertaken by the development finance institutions have identified an infrastructure gap of approximately US $1.9 trillion annually in developing countries. In Latin America and the Caribbean region, this gap is estimated at approximately US $150 billion per year, or 2.5% of GDP. Moreover, a failure to add new capital to existing stocks is estimated to cost, on average, 1 percentage point of foregone GDP growth. Madam Presiding Officer, this number can rise to 15 percentage points if the gap exists above 10 years. We in Tobago know only too well what it means to have an infrastructure deficit. Over the past decade, the Assembly's development program allocation has received, on average, approximately 17% of its requests. This is to say, there is a gap of 83% between funds allocated for development expenditure and funds requested. As the Assembly seeks to close this infrastructure gap, it is of utmost importance that we first find innovative ways to engage the private sector to play a more meaningful role in advancing the island's infrastructure investment. In fact, most of the available empirical evidence suggests that in countries such as ours, public investment, particularly in particularly in infrastructure, crowds in rather than crowds out private investment, owing to the positive impact of public investment on productivity and the rate of return on private capital. Secondly, it is crucial that we invest in the development of a comprehensive and strategic development program, which clearly outlines a realistic blueprint for medium-term goals, or contributions and commitment as a government, and in improving project identification, development, and prioritization, even as we incorporate opportunities for private investment mobilization. As such, Madam Presiding Officer, a multi-sectoral committee was established in the Division of Finance and the Economy to review, develop, and recommend a strategy to address the island's infrastructure needs for the medium to long term. This committee includes a cross-section of professionals and is geared towards ensuring a coordinated and unified approach to capital investment and to the development of a comprehensive and viable project pipeline. This pipeline will help to ensure that our focus remains on strategic implementation of physical, social, and digital infrastructure to support sustainable growth, irrespective of implementation via public, private, or blended financing mechanisms. The committee will continue working with our stakeholders and our multilateral partners to advance project development, and the first priority investment package will be completed early in fiscal 2021. Madam Presiding Officer, I have said previously that infrastructure development plays a key role in generating economic activity and improving efficiency of service delivery. And this administration is therefore committed to taking the measured and multi-pronged approach to operations to ensure that we create the enabling environment required for development. Madam Presiding Officer, even as we pursue this longer-term strategic planning framework, during the course of fiscal 2021, the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and the Environment is scheduled to undertake several major projects, including the construction of the 3rd Milford Road Bridge, the Signal Hill River Bridge. Second, the continuation of the rehabilitation of the Claude Noel Highway. Third, continuation of the 2nd and 3rd phases of the Milford Road bypass to Smithfield, to connect Smithfield and Sansasil. The upgrade and realignment work to sections of the Windward Main Road, including Turpin Bend in Charlottesville, the King Street Junction in Delaford, and the construction of retaining walls in Mount St. George. Fifthly, Madam Presiding Officer, the continuation of the coastal rehabilitation and protection works at Pigeon Point, at Milford Bay Grange, and at Roxborough, and the completion of a flood mitigation feasibility study for Canaan and Bonaccord and Roxborough. Madam Presiding Officer, at this time, please allow me to expand on our efforts to preserve our environment. Madam Presiding Officer, environmental sustainability remains another critical priority area of this administration. Over the next fiscal year, we propose to undertake a number of initiatives, all geared towards sustainable development and enhancing the quality of life of citizens and residents in Tobago. In this regard, one of the major projects to be undertaken in fiscal 2021 will be the Tobago Resource Recycling Initiative. The Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and the Environment, in collaboration with the Division of Health and Wellness and other private sector partners, will collaborate to improve solid waste management in Tobago. This initiative, which commenced in fiscal 2020, will conclude in fiscal 2021. Another initiative is the designation of the Northeast Tobago as a UNESCO Man and the Biosphere Reserve. This designation will assist in providing access to information, technical expertise, support, and funding through national and international networks to be used in the development of Northeast Tobago and provide a framework to guide and reinforce projects in this area. The division will also continue the air quality monitoring program, which is aimed at assessing levels of air pollution at various locations throughout Tobago. This will assist us, Madam Presiding Officer, in monitoring the impact of development.
Members, at this time, we'll take a break and we'll resume at 12:13.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Just before the break, Madam Presiding Officer, I was treating with environmental sustainability and the fact that this remains another critical priority area of this administration. And as such, Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Infrastructure will continue the air quality monitoring program, which is aimed at assessing levels of air pollution at various locations throughout Tobago. This will assist us in monitoring the impact of development on our environment and on our health. Another project proposed by the Division of Infrastructure is aimed at monitoring and mitigating the impact of sargassum on humans and on the environment. This project seeks to achieve, among other things, the development of a sargassum early warning system, and this system will allow for more effective planning, distribution of resources, and timely stakeholder information dissemination to adequately address the negative fallout of this seaweed deluge, which results in the closing of impacted beaches, restaurants, and hotels and guest houses. This system will also facilitate the timely removal of sargassum from coastline in significantly affected communities, and will also provide waste material for recycling and composting. Madam Presiding Officer, the foregoing are the primary areas which the Assembly's fiscal package for 2021 will address. Though audacious, we believe that our program of activities will assist in stimulating our economy as well as mitigating the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. At this time, Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me to present our expenditure estimates for fiscal 2021, starting with recurrent expenditure. Madam Presiding Officer, the recurrent estimates for fiscal 2021 total $3.07 billion. Disaggregated personnel expenditure, $840.9 million. Goods and services, $1 billion. Minor equipment purchases, $90.7 million. And transfers and subsidies, $1.1 billion. Madam Presiding Officer, this represents a decrease of just under $191.4 million from last year's request. The recurrent estimates for the divisions for fiscal 2021 are as follows. Assembly Legislature, $24.8 million. Office of the Chief Secretary, $167.4 million. Finance and Economy, $291.7 million. Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries, $276.5 million. Tourism, Culture and Transportation, $234.7 million. Education, Innovation and Energy, $525.6 million. Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor, $118.4 million. Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, $475 million. Health, Wellness and Family Development, $811.7 million. Settlements, Urban Renewal and Public Utilities, $41.2 million. And Sport and Youth Affairs, $104.9 million. Madam Presiding Officer, some of the highlights in the recurrent estimates for fiscal 2021 are as follows. The Tobago Tourism Agency, $56 million. Tobago Information Technology Limited, $14 million. Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute, $13.7 million. Tobago Infrastructure Investment Strategy, $9 million. Agricultural Incentive Program, $4 million. Implementation of the Tobago Intelligent Island Initiative, $3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, I now turn my attention to the development program estimates for fiscal 2021. The estimates of expenditure in the development program for fiscal 2021 amount to $1.5 billion, an increase of $75.1 million from the fiscal 2020 request to the central government. The development program estimates are disaggregated as follows. Pre-investment studies, $0.5 million. Economic infrastructure, $563.5 million. Social infrastructure, $764.3 million. And multi-sectoral and other services, $194.2 million. Madam Presiding Officer, to continue our diversification efforts and facilitate the development of our private sector, our estimates for the development program will provide support for the Enterprise Development Company of Tobago, EDCOT, $34 million, the Business Incubator Program, $5 million, the Scarborough Esplanade Phase 2 Project, $5 million, the Enterprise Development Grant Program, $5 million, and the Enterprise Development Loan Program, $3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the development program estimates also caters for the tourism sector in fiscal 2021. As such, the estimates provide for the Tobago Tourism Agency, $91 million, the Lure Wildlife Nature Park, $5.6 million, the Fort King George Heritage Park Project, $5.1 million, and the Kings Bay Beach Facility, $3.5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the revitalization of the agriculture sector remains a critical priority of this administration. As such, the development program estimates cater for the Agricultural Access Roads Program, $50 million, the improvement to beaches and landing facilities, $10 million, the Tobago Agro-Processing Production Upgrade Project, $8.5 million, and the Indian Walk Root Crop Project, $7.7 million. Madam Presiding Officer, we continue to support the education sector on the island, and this remains another priority area of this administration. Therefore, the development program estimates make provision for the upgrade of several educational institutions during fiscal 2021. We have therefore budgeted for the relocation, construction of the Scarborough Secondary School, $50 million, transition to digital learning, $15 million, the construction refurbishment of the Roxborough Library, $12 million, establishment of a Tobago Science Research Center, $10 million, improvements to primary schools, $6.5 million, acquisition of e-testing resources for schools, $5 million, and the establishment of early childhood centers across the island, $5 million. Madam Presiding Officer, provisions are also made for community expansion and residential development programs in fiscal 2021. Accordingly, our estimates provide for land development at the Adelphi Estate, $134 million, the Rise Land Housing Development Project, $60 million, Adventure Phase 2, $31 million, Corland Estate Land Development, $11 million, and the Blenheim Housing Estate Phase 2, $8.3 million. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, we'll continue to upgrade and expand our road infrastructure and to protect our coastline. Our development program estimates for fiscal 2021 also provides for emergency infrastructure rehabilitation work, $45 million, major improvement works on secondary roads, $40 million, the program for upgrading road efficiency, $25 million, an expanded road resurfacing program, $20 million, improvement to Milford Road bridges, $15 million, and rehabilitation of the Claude Noel Highway Phase 2, $15 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the development program estimates give an indication of the areas of focus to advance this island's development. Our work program encompasses various sectors and geographic locations and are geared towards elevating the quality of life of all residents on the island. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to include as well in the estimates for fiscal 2021 provisions for URP and CPEP totaling $71 million and $43 million respectively. Madam Presiding Officer, over the last 12 months, URP and CPEP were restructured to improve productivity and operational efficiency. Both programs executed several initiatives, including construction projects, environmental preservation, agricultural production, and the and the manufacturing of furniture and concrete products. These activities will continue within the next fiscal year. Madam Presiding Officer, taken together, the overall budgetary request of the Tobago House of Assembly for fiscal 2021 is $4.71 billion. Again, the overall budgetary request of the Tobago House of Assembly for fiscal 2021 is $4.71 billion. This includes funding for the development program and recurrent estimates, as well as provisions for CPEP and URP. Madam Presiding Officer, for fiscal 2021, the estimates of revenue, both tax and non-tax, are as follows. Taxes on income and profits, $136.5 million. Taxes on property, $0.9 million. Taxes on goods and services, $52.3 million. Taxes on international trade, $3.5 million. Other taxes, $4 million, bringing total tax revenues projected for fiscal 2021 to $197.2 million. Property income taxes, $0.02 million. Other non-tax revenue, $1.08 million, resulting in total non-tax revenue of $1.1 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the total revenue projection for fiscal 2021 is $198.3 million. Madam Presiding Officer, to obtain a fairer and more accurate estimate of Tobago's contribution to the national economy, one will have to include data from sources which are often ignored, but which can be quite substantial. These include revenue generated from exploration, production, and utilization of resources which form part of Tobago's blue economy. Current economic recording and accounting practices also do not disaggregate these revenues, but in the process of devolution, all of Tobago can be assured that this is an issue which must be addressed. In addition, there's also the matter of taxes, fees, duties, and levies of companies and financial institutions operating in Tobago, but paid centrally by their head offices in Trinidad. Institutions such as banks and insurance companies with subsidiaries operating in Tobago should be paying taxes in Tobago in conformity with the stipulations of Section 49(2) of the Tobago Act 40 of 1996. Moreover, tax receipts emanating from the importation of goods through Trinidad all represents receipts which should be accounted for in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, these are but just a few of the issues we should expect to be resolved in the new self-government legislation now before Parliament. Madam Presiding Officer, governments globally have long faced severe challenges in funding their capital investment programs, and this has been further exacerbated by the economic and financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet, strategic investment in infrastructure can enhance a country's ability to adapt and support economic resilience in response to foundational economic disruptions. Whether it is physical, social, or digital infrastructure, it is imperative that as an assembly, we find comprehensive, innovative, and efficient ways to advance our investment in this island's development. Several strategies can be employed to supplement the traditional funding of a development program. And these include the identification of new funding sources, the pursuit of new financing mechanisms such as loans, guarantees, credit lines, or the development of new financial arrangements with the private sector or general public. Leveraged effectively, any one or combination of these strategies can be utilized to complement the existing Assembly's allocation and enhance overall value for money. Madam Presiding Officer, one funding mechanism currently being explored is that of a robust joint venture agreement that provides value captured by splitting the cost of infrastructure development between the state and the private developer. Alternatively, there are those that provide direct benefits, such as a predetermined percentage of gross revenue of the construction and maintenance of specified public goods in the identified area. This mechanism is primarily utilized for projects that generate revenue, such as transportation projects or market-based initiatives, and this will be directly pursued by the Assembly in our public sector investment strategy. Madam Presiding Officer, in addition to the new funding sources, we are also seeking the assistance of our multilateral partners for technical advisory support to develop and build the necessary capacity within the Assembly as we strengthen our debt management strategy. The guidelines for public debt management by the IMF, as well as the national legal and regulatory guidelines, along with other regional and international best practices, will be used to shape our institutional and operational debt management framework. Madam Presiding Officer, in my last budget statement, I indicated that the Tobago House of Assembly was also exploring an alternative financing mechanism through the issuance of a bond to fund the perennial shortfall experienced under the Assembly's public sector investment program. I'm pleased to advise this Honorable House and the people of Tobago that the Assembly has made significant advances in this regard. I'm also pleased to inform this Honorable House that the formal approval to issue a TT $300 million bond was received from the Minister of Finance in accordance with Section 51B of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. The Division of Finance and Economy has adopted the guidelines and prudential borrowing limits recommended by the World Bank for the issuance of bonds in the domestic capital markets to finance infrastructure projects. The Executive Council has also approved the appointment of Citizens Bank as arranger for the formal placement of the Assembly's bond, and they have provided a preliminary term sheet for consideration. Madam Presiding Officer, we are very optimistic that this transaction will be finalized within the upcoming month, providing funding for a suite of capital projects approved by the Tobago House of Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, this is a major milestone achievement for the Assembly and Tobago and the people of Tobago, and all Tobagonians should be deservedly proud. Madam Presiding Officer, the third category of alternative financing mechanisms available to us is the public-private partnership modality. This modality leverages private capital, expertise, and innovation. The Division of Finance has recently received approval to accelerate the development of the required PPP procurement administration and is diligently working with other departments and teams in the Assembly to improve the project development and prioritization process across the development program. The division continues to work closely with the IDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the Development Bank of Jamaica to institute regional best practices to further develop the procurement process and advance investment interests in our candidate projects. Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Finance and Economy remains committed to taking a measured approach to the implementation of these initiatives that I have just mentioned. We'll continue to invest in and leverage the support for institutionalizing best practices, as well as engineering the enabling environment required to accelerate delivery of our development priorities. Madam Presiding Officer, another measure to supplement the funding of estimates in our development program is local and foreign private sector investment. Madam Presiding Officer, a recent publication by the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, stated, and I quote, "It's not simply about creating the conditions for foreign capital to enter. It's about attracting investments that become sources of technological, productive, and employment-related overflows that are oriented towards sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth." It is with this in mind, Madam Presiding Officer, that we seek to refine existing institutional structures to engender a more enabling environment for doing business, as well as develop a comprehensive investment strategy that provides a nuanced response to the needs of the citizens and entities in Tobago. Quality foreign direct investment has proven to have positive effects on economic performance, and the advantages experienced in the developing countries that have managed this process effectively is unparalleled. As a small island developing state, intensifying foreign direct investment will result in both direct and indirect benefits, such as an inward flow of capital into the economy, improved access to technology and innovative practices, employment opportunities, infrastructure development, and logistics. Madam Presiding Officer, foreign direct investment will require improvements in our infrastructure to build on a thriving investment ecosystem, streamlining of the processes and procedures for foreign investors entering the domestic market, and improving the ease of doing business here in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Finance and Economy, with the assistance of our multilateral partners, will develop a medium-term investment strategy to increase and to attract foreign direct investment to Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, to support this initiative, it is therefore important that we undertake an assessment of the ease of doing business here on the island. Annually, the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report assesses 11 indicators to create an index used to compare and rank the ease of doing business on the economies of 190 countries, including Trinidad and Tobago. These indicators can be modified for applicability to the Tobago environment, with specific emphasis not only on starting a business, but on maintaining one. As such, the research will address issues faced when scaling up enterprises, physical infrastructure challenges in logistics, support for innovation and improving competitiveness, as well as human capital development as it relates to investment readiness. The first iteration of this assessment will be completed by the end of this financial year and will be undertaken annually. Madam Presiding Officer, we anticipate the support of all businesses and stakeholder advocacy groups, as well as individual contributors to ensure wider representation and a targeted analysis towards identifying the specific enablers that will facilitate increased commercial activity across the island. We'll also collaborate with InvestTT to improve investor inquiry management. This is to ensure a coordinated approach and involvement of the relevant stakeholders, as well as the targeting of suitable investors, facilitation and aftercare services to retain and encourage future investment. Additionally, as Secretary of Finance and the Economy, I'm working closely with the Minister of Finance to address the challenges identified with the land license regime. In particular, the niggling issue that often confronts and deters investors is the processing time and other bureaucratic challenges. Madam Presiding Officer, before I conclude my presentation this morning, please permit me to highlight some of the ongoing collaborations with the central government. Madam Presiding Officer, you may recall in the last Tobago House of Assembly elections, we campaigned on the theme, enhancing delivery, strengthening partnerships. This theme embraced and solidified the concept of the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly working in a harmonious manner for the overall socioeconomic development of Tobago. Over the last 3 years, through fruitful collaborations between the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly, a number of socioeconomic initiatives and projects were undertaken which significantly benefited Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, as it pertains to the Sea Bridge, after discussions and collaborations with the central government, 2 brand new vessels were purchased through Austral Ships and Incat Limited to service the inter-island sea bridge. Thus far, one of the vessels, the APT James, is completed and expected to be commissioned and delivered shortly. The other vessel is expected to be delivered later this year. In the interim, the lease has been extended on the Jean de la Vallée, which currently services the Sea Bridge alongside the Cabo Star, the Galleon's Passage, and the Trinidad and Tobago Spirit. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration continues to collaborate with the central government to enhance the security and safety of the island. Following the completion of the Old Grange Police Station last year, at a cost of $75.8 million, the Roxborough Police Station is now completed at a cost of $78.1 million. Additionally, the Roxborough Fire Station is now at 83% completion and is expected to be completed by July 2020 at a cost of $37.4 million. Madam Presiding Officer, the Assembly and the Ministry of Finance continues to work together on the construction of the A&R Robinson International Airport Terminal at Crown Point at a cost of approximately $500 million TT dollars. Land preparation is ongoing at Sherwin and Cano Bay for the relocation of residents and commercial businesses. Recently, $41 million was approved for the payment of compensation to the first batch of 29 property owners. Madam Presiding Officer, another area of collaboration between the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government is with the Ministry of Public Utilities through the Water and Sewage Authority in the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam. Madam Presiding Officer, we are embarking on phase 4 of this project, which includes maintenance and dredging of the dam at an estimated cost of $40.6 million. Madam Presiding Officer, additionally, through the ongoing collaboration between the Assembly and the Self-Help Commission, we have witnessed the improvement in the lives of many Tobagonians over the past years. Only recently, under the self-help housing program, 36 families on the island received a total of $550,000 for minor house repairs, construction, emergency relief, and other development works. Additionally, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment and the National Self-Help Commission to build a single-lane 36-foot bridge in Goodwood. Madam Presiding Officer, please permit me at this time to give an update as it relates to the issue of the important issue of internal self-government for Tobago, as this administration continues to advance the island's desire to be empowered to govern its own affairs. Madam Presiding Officer, the Constitution Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill 2018, contrary to what some persons who should have known better may want us to believe, is currently on the government's legislative agenda and before a joint select committee of Parliament for meticulous and clinical examination. This, Madam Presiding Officer, is a necessary part of the process to secure bipartisan support for this legislation. And I hope when the member opposite is responding on Thursday, he can give us an update if he solicited the support of his friends in Trinidad regarding this important bill. But Madam Presiding Officer, as I conclude today's budget presentation, I wish to reiterate a point that and to echo a point that I made earlier, that the global community is facing an unprecedented crisis which has serious implications for our country and for our island. This crisis has affected societies and economies around the globe in a way no other event has, and as it continues to unfold, it will permanently reshape our world. Yet in spite of what appears to be insurmountable challenges, we must resolve to draw inspiration from our national motto: together we aspire, together we achieve, so that we as a people will do our part to mitigate some of the adverse effects of this crisis and place our island and our country on a sustainable path to recovery. This collective sense of responsibility must become the guiding principle of our civic life so that our island and our country will emerge from this crisis stronger and more resilient than ever before. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to extend my profound gratitude to the Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, for his decisive and dynamic leadership, as well as the Minister of Health and our Medical Chief of Staff and his team at the Ministry of Health for the professional manner in which the entire crisis has been managed. It is this astute leadership and professionalism that has seen our country receive unbiased global recognition for our outstanding management of the COVID-19 pandemic. I also wish to thank both the current and former Chief Secretaries, as well as our new political leader and Secretary for Health, Wellness and Family Development, for the skillful manner in which the COVID-19 crisis has been managed on the island. Moreover, I wish at this time as well to thank all our frontline staff for the exemplary devotion to duty they displayed during the crisis, as well as all our residents on the island for the responsible manner in which we all responded to the crisis. We have done exceptionally well. As citizens in a democracy where nothing is more sacred than the mandate given by the people, we must all be proud of what we have been able to achieve. We must now continue to work to keep our island and our country safe by following all the protocols of our health professionals. Our health and safety must be paramount at this time. In this decade, which has just begun, Our country is being heralded as a global leader in our management of the pandemic. This underscores the fact that when there is honest, responsible, committed, and sober leadership in times of crisis, every citizen will be willing to sacrifice his or her own partisan interest to that of the national interest. And that bears repeating, Madam Presiding Officer. This underscores the fact that when there is honest, responsible, committed, and sober leadership in times of crisis, every citizen will be willing to sacrifice his or own partisan interest for that of the national interest. We are first and foremost citizens of this country and leaders or supporters of any particular ideology thereafter. Now, therefore, this is not the time for persons to be attempting to score cheap political points. The esteem of our country must be deemed more important than our party's loyalties. As we look to the future, Madam Presiding Officer, we must confront our challenges and work diligently to address them. This Assembly has an audacious program of activities planned for all our citizens resident on the island over the next fiscal year. We are cognizant of the fact that the road ahead will not be easy, but we are confident that if we work together, we can overcome whatever challenges we face as an island. The qualities of thrift, industriousness, tenacity, resilience, and honesty, for which we as Tobagonians are well known, are the same qualities that we need to take us through these difficult times. We also have a responsive and responsible central government, which has pledged their support to this Assembly in the task of recalibrating our priorities to a more resilient future. Madam Presiding Officer, this has been another auspicious morning. And so, on behalf of the Chief Secretary, all secretaries and assistant secretaries of the Tobago House of Assembly, I most wholeheartedly thank the audience within this chamber and outside this chamber, the wider listening public, for their time and attention. Please note that all the budget documents are available online for ongoing review and feedback. And I must say at this time, may God continue to bless you and bless the people of Tobago and the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I so now beg to move.
Members, the question proposed is, be it further resolved that the House approve the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure respecting all functions of the Tobago House of Assembly for the financial year October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021, copies of which were laid on the table at an earlier stage of the proceeding. Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I beg to move that this House now stand adjourned to Thursday, 25th of June at 10 a.m.
Members, the question is that this House now stands adjourned to Thursday, 25th June, 2020 at 10 a.m. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Thursday, 25th June, 2020 at 10 a.m.